And here we are. Welcome to everyone. Lala and I are very happy tonight to have Sharif Anael-Bey. Did I get it right?
You got it perfect.
Okay, great. So you are one interesting fellow, and I'm really happy you and Lala were able to connect through our mutual friend Alan Greenfield, and happy to have you join us because, and I encourage everyone who watches tonight to go to either the Orbis Paranormal page on Facebook or to the YouTube video once we're done and look at the description, because I've got a list that long of stuff you need to look into to understand what an interesting man Sharif Anael-Bey is. Okay, Sharif, tell us about you.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I'm a regular guy. As a profession, I teach martial arts. I'm a martial arts instructor. I'm a lifelong martial arts practitioner. That definitely dovetails into what we're going to be talking about today. I have a great interest and always have had a great interest in things that that are considered other than normal.
Yes.
You know,
I call it esoterica.
There we go. Yes. Always. I mean, even at a very, very, very young age, I told my mother, I remember at around age 4, that I wanted to design aircraft and spacecraft. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah. Very young age. And that interest and that interest has always stuck with me, even though I didn't go that way as an adult. I've always had that interest. I still have that interest. I still have that interest. It's as if there's a part of me that wants to go back out there, so to speak.
Well, professionally, I did have that interest and pursued it. So this is good. I'm glad. Lala and I are both experiencers. We both had experiences from young. Yes. I forgot mine for most of my adult life. She could never escape it, no matter how hard she tried. And once I started having mine, and once she was ready to admit hers, we got together, and here we are.
Beautiful.
So look, I'm going to bring up a thing that I want to share, because I want you to tell us about it, because like probably most other people that are listening, we won't have a clue what this is about.
Got you.
Okay, this is the Sagala Institute for Bioenergetic Transhumanism.
Yes.
Speak as long as you like, because this is really interesting.
Very cool. Well, let's talk about the term transhumanism really quickly. For the most part, transhumanism is associated with cybernetics, with like a blending of man and machine, right?
I love it.
Yes. Now, me personally, this my personal perspective is the human the human experience. Because I don't want to just say the human body. The human experience is the machinery. The human body is the technology.
Yeah.
You know, I'm fond of. I tell even my students, I'm like, one of the things that a lot of the black budget projects and special access programs are they know, and now it's kind of presumed, is that their cutting edge stuff is all ancient tech.
Yeah.
It's ancient tech. And to really understand where it's going, you have to put on another thinking cap. You have to have another way to think. You have to have another paradigm or another narrative of thought to even understand a lot of these things. And so this goes back to my martial arts training, my involvement with some particular special orders, organizations, fraternities, because, cutting it short, they're repositories for a lot of this old tech, a lot of it, they're repositories for it. And so what we call bioenergetic transhumanism is, to put simply, we're learning to what it is to be more completely human.
Okay. All right.
You see, if it happens, if there's an occurrence that does not mesh with what's considered the accepted norm, then it's a lot of times it's called paranormal, extrasensory, whatever. If it happens, it's possible. If it's possible, it's repeatable.
Yes.
If it's repeatable, all we need is methodology.
Yeah, exactly, and training.
There you go.
Okay, so I have this big interest in. I want, because I've been a scientist, but also now I'm into all of this.
Yes.
It's and I see behind you that you have many books, and so I'm an information glutton, and so I also care about where I see we are going, which is implanting devices that will allow our consciousness to have instantaneous access to the glut of worldwide information and beyond. Or does your view of transhumanism, does it oppose this?
It doesn't oppose that. It just takes maybe a slightly different direction. It doesn't oppose it. And I'm not opposed to usage of actual, physical tech like machinery. I'm not opposed to that at all, as long as we're not retarding human development in the process.
Well, I think a lot of our technology has done that. We've become, let me be a little blunt.
Yes.
We've become slovenly. We're lazy.
Yes.
Out of shape.
Yes.
We don't do any manual labor. And I'm not talking about everyone, but I'm talking about to a great degree. Yeah. So all of society is reduction of labor and less requirement for physical exertion and mental exertion, and people are addicted to their devices.
Yes.
And so these things seem to me to be harming humanism and humanity.
Absolutely.
We're not in touch with ourselves anymore. That's the whole thing.
Yes. We have a saying. We say, without a foe, a soldier never knows his strength. And
Absolutely.
Thought must be developed by the exercise of strength.
Yes.
So anything that causes us to say, sit back, relax, and that's retarding thinking.
Yeah.
You see, so convenience retards thinking. And so that's what we're against. We're for the expansion of consciousness. Mm-hmm. But we have to be careful, right? In other words, we want to expand consciousness, expand perception without cracking the psyche.
Right.
There still has to be volition. You see?
Yes.
So,
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I practice meditation.
Yes.
And so that is volition. It's not as active as pumping weights or doing martial arts, but it requires discipline.
Now, that's something that I would, okay, I agree, right? But now our perspective, like for instance, my martial arts instructor, his name is Grandmaster Frank Yi-Chi-Wai, right? A number of years ago, we had him lecture at Syracuse University on the development of Chinese martial arts, right? And how a people for 5,000 plus years, the Chinese, how did they survive with enemies on their north, west, and southern borders much bigger and stronger than them? How in the world did they do that? Besides many of them dying, sure. They figured out, one, okay, force against force, not so good for us. But guess what else they figured out? Here it is. We can develop this, but only to a limit.
Right.
This we can develop with no limits. And most important, we can develop this the way you develop this.
Right.
Right? So, right. And so, like, even for us, like what you mentioned about meditation, right? Meditation requires volition. It's not something as simple as I just relax and light some nice incense and play some music. No. Meditation is literally exercise for this. We make this strong enough that it can now affect physicality.
Right.
See?
Absolutely.
And this is where people are going with psionics and things like that. Sure.
Yeah,
But,
so both of us are, me as much as anyone in this house is interested in a guy named Sean McNamara, who is all about training consciousness to do all sorts of things, including telekinetics, healing, blindfolded seeing, remote viewing. And so this is mental development, and your focus seems somewhat on mental development, but also the fine tuning of the machine through repetitive, I will call them dance steps, which of course is what the moves are.
Yes.
When you learn the moves, you're learning the dance steps. So tell us about your particular version of martial arts.
Very good. Good. The term Kung Fu is a slang word. So it's not the name of a style. It's a slang word, a recent slang word for any martial art that comes from China. So China's very big. You've got hundreds of different subcultures, hundreds of different styles, right? But the very, the premise that I mentioned before about training this is a part of all of it, because look at it as mindful movement, right? Mindful movement. There's consciousness, concentrated consciousness in every movement. And really good Kung Fu is you have a high level of consciousness, even in the smallest things.
Right. So, I mean, it's clear to me, having, read Sun Tzu since I was a child and following some of this. I'm not a martial artist by any stretch of the imagination. However, I understand, given my occupation
Yes.
as an intelligence officer who went and did strange things,
Yes.
that fear cannot dominate you. Your mind has to be in control, or you're in trouble. And the same has to be true in martial arts.
Absolutely. You lose that, you lose your, we play, in my style, there's a heavy emphasis on breath work.
Yes.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, but the most important reason is breath work is the interface between the physical part of you and the non-physical part of you.
Right. Breath work is absolutely step one in any good meditation training.
That's a fact. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so there's, that's a huge part of our work. Now, one of the things I'd like to share with the audience, and that's a part of our Kung Fu tradition. One of the major figures is a Chinese national folk hero by the name of Wong Fei Hung. Wong Fei Hung was one of the top martial artists of his day in China and one of the top 4 doctors in China during his day. So we carry a very big medical component to our Kung Fu training. Now, what makes our medical stuff so good is the internal power development. What the Chinese term is Qigong, right? So that plays a huge part in what makes our medicine so effective. So we actually teach we actually have a medical Qigong course, a certifiable medical Qigong course.
Good. Good.
Right. It's 5 modules. The final test is a written and a practical test. Part of the practical test is we get a bottle of wine, 2 cups, pour wine in both cups from the same bottle, get a taster to ensure that it's the same wine. The person testing then projects their energy into one of the cups for 60 seconds to change the pH content. And then they taste it again to tell whether it passed or failed.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, I'll be honest. I've been a scientist for 50 years.
Nice.
For 50 years, I've been a scientist, and I was a geek for 10 years before that.
Yes. Okay.
So I would not accept this telekinesis business at all until recently. And she introduced, other people told me, but she introduced me to it.
Very nice.
And within a single day, I had become completely convinced that if a person like me has the ability, anyone can have the ability if they wish to do it, have the volition to do it, and have the discipline to practice. I've seen her do it, and now I can do it.
There you go. And see, we live in a world that has an overshadowing worldview that says that that's impossible.
Right. Well, the materialistic world is it's less than half of it, and we have harmed ourselves.
That's a fact. We I use this, with my students. I'll talk about electromagnetic energy and the fact that there's only a tiny sliver of it that is part of the visible spectrum to humans.
Right.
And then I asked the question, I said, what if it's possible for you to expand your visual perception beyond infrared and ultraviolet? What else would you see?
Right. A lot.
Absolutely. And just asking the question then plants the seed in their mind of the possibility, even if it's remote. The fact that that seed is now planted now begins to work. And so now, even in part, they begin to accept the possibility. And this is paradigm shifting, even at a slow level.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. There's a scientist, I'm trying to remember his name. I got a chance to meet him very, 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 very briefly. I can't remember his name, but it'll come to me. But he was commissioned at one point to debunk radionics. And of course, you know how it goes when you run around the pool long enough, you fall in. So why am I drawing a blank? But anyway, he went there to debunk it, found out that not only could he not debunk it, he had a lot to learn.
Right.
He had a lot to learn about the fact that consciousness is a tool and consciousness plays a part, and so, radiology, psychotronics, you're talking about consciousness assisted technology.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yes.
Does it make one single ounce of sense, logical, personal, spiritual, whatever, to you, that as much as our consciousness is the impetus for much of our interaction, perception, and relationship with everything around us, yes, that it is not physical? So there has to be a physics of consciousness that we just have not understood yet.
Listen,
and when you can take your mind and remote view or move an object or change the pH in a wine glass, yes, or blend some water and change its structure, yes, I got to tell you, we are ignorant.
Very much so. Very much so. It's, there's a great book that I had a long time ago that, sometimes you get a book, you're like, oh, it's interesting, it's good. And then 10 years later, you're like, I had no idea how good it was until just now.
Yeah.
My good friend George Katchmer wrote this a long time ago. It's called The Tao of Bioenergetics. And what it is, it's a comparative analysis between Eastern and Western bioenergetic models.
Interesting.
And it's really good because in the West, we wouldn't think of psychology as a bioenergetic system. But
we should.
in the East, these things were less suppressed in the older days. So therefore, things like, especially a lot of the Qigong methods, they're more readily available, right? And so anyone that's studied any Qigong that's worth their salt will tell you, they say, Yi leads the Qi. The intent leads the energy.
Got it.
Intent leads the energy, right? And so that is why, number one reason why archetypal psychology is an actual bioenergetic system. Why Willem Rake was able to take Carl Jung's and Sigmund Freud's stuff and go straight from philosophy to actual operative work.
Without intent, how do you direct any energy, whether it's physical or conscious or whatever? If you're going to interact, you need intent to marshal it anyway.
That's right. And so, but now intent is a thing that we can train, focus, and concentrate and tonify, just like we can a bicep. Like I'll give you an example. In Chinese medicine, we talk about qi, or qi or energy. Qi is a relationship. It's a syzygy. That's what it is. I touch my arm, my mind feels the sensation, it directs my attention there, qi is present, right? Now, what if I touched it with a burning hot ember?
Right.
How much more intent is there? You see? So we need a critical mass of intent, of focused intent, to get the desired result energetically.
Right.
That takes the training that you were talking about.
I'm sure you're familiar with imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So you have to, like, every single day in the training of those who come to you,
yes,
work to overcome imposter syndrome, which is, let me translate it for the audience, which means I don't belong here. I can never catch up. I can never do what they're doing. So I'm going to give up. How do you overcome imposter syndrome in your students?
It's interesting. That's a great thing. A great question too. When we in Chinese martial arts, we have what we call external and we call internal. Put it simply, external is what you could see, internal is what you can't see, right? And we could train both, and really good skill is both combined. Okay. And again, I'm using Chinese bioenergetic lingo. Internal intent is internal, right? You have a lot of old masters that will say, oh, it takes 15 years to learn the internal. No, it doesn't. It takes about 8 years for you to believe it.
Right.
That is based on how people have been teaching it. And through my instructor, his thing is, no, we can teach it just like that. We can, in other words, we can kill the imposter syndrome. We can kill the imposter syndrome. And how do we do it? This is how we do it. We get everybody to feel it within 5 to 10 minutes tops. Everybody feels it. We say seeing is believing, feeling is the truth. Once you feel it, you own it.
Right. That's true.
When you can reproduce it, it's yours now. You've drunk the Kool-Aid. It's over now. You can't go back.
Her philosophy is baby steps. So she takes baby steps, which is her way of trying something new that she's not sure she can do.
Yes. But even go.
My question is, do you think that we as humans a long time ago had all these capabilities and that we now have been purposely dumbed down, and so we have to reteach our natural selves, our natural powers, instincts? Does that make sense?
Listen,
I feel like we've been dumbed down.
Lala, that makes incredible sense. Now, I say my short answer is absolutely, but there's more to it. I'll speak to. We're taught in this worldview that we live in now that time moves linearly.
Right.
That there was a beginning, that there is the beginning, therefore there will be the end. That's what we're taught. We're taught that, okay, life evolved from, molecules, organic molecules, to single cell, into multi. Okay. And where we are now is the highest we've ever been in terms of technology. We know better than that.
Yeah.
Because you got all this other stuff that's out there now that's thousands and thousands of years old. That the
tens of thousands. We're finding structures that are older than recorded history that had a technology that couldn't possibly have existed given our current thinking.
So it's not even a matter of the information is wrong. It's our parameter of thinking is that's wrong. The way this one old wise man said it this way: we measure time by cycle ages, and the gate to every age we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. So we've been here many times before.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've been at this space many times before. See, we caught up to our ancient forefathers with Oppenheimer and the first nuclear bomb.
Right.
We're just starting to catch up. So we've been here before, we just forget. But now, with each cycle, there's survivors.
Right. Yeah, so I believe even with what Oppenheimer started, which has changed the total world in 4 years, if we had a bad situation, we now know enough to survive and move forward. What I'm hoping is, and I really do hope this, and I hope to participate, is the storing of information in something where we can transfer it forward to the next cycle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And things like the Great Pyramid of Giza, I truly believe that, those things like that are exactly what you just mentioned, that they're place markers, and that if we understood them fully. Now there's people that I'm pretty sure already understood.
There's these people that have found out that the Great Pyramid, which is of course a copy of the one right next to it, is you're able to focus throughout the thing this microwave signal.
Correct.
What ancient Egyptians had microwave signaling?
Right.
I mean, come on. So something else was there that had that technology.
Absolutely. And then back to Lala's point. So you have, it's just like the idea of reincarnation, right? It's the idea of reincarnation. Okay, we come back, we're back in flesh, but we don't remember the previous day, what we had, the clothes we had on the previous day. Pretty much the same idea. Get it? Some people do though. But all of us is somewhere in there that we could tap into it and go, oh, this is what I wore yesterday in the previous incarnation, right? So in addition to having that issue that Lala spoke to, now you've got you've got powers that be that don't want you to remember.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you to remember. They don't, and those are the things that in general we're fighting. Alan would call it the Black Lodge versus the Great White Brotherhood.
And let me make sure everybody knows the Alan he's talking about is Alan Greenfield.
That's correct. Alan Greenfield. And, and so, one group it's like in the Matrix Revolutions, the third one, right? When Neo meets the Oracle for the third time and he says, he's talking about the architect. And he's like, well, the architect said that, in less than 24 hours, Zion's going to be destroyed. And she goes, oh yeah, that's him. His whole thing is to balance the equation. Right. And he goes, well, what's yours? And she said to unbalance it. Right. And so this goes back to what we're saying about things that retard thought versus things that engender and encourage thought. And it's motion, it's discomfort that encourages thinking. And that's
okay. So we've chased you around some topics. Is there some topic you want to convey to our audience that we are not getting to because we're ignorant?
Listen. This is what we're talking about. To me, is the topic.
Okay.
It is the topic, and that is the necessity. The necessity, because we only have, in general, one half of the equation. We understand technology, but we understand technology from an outward perspective. We see ourselves. I'll share a story about Shaolin Kung Fu. My style comes from Shaolin. Shaolin's very famous.
Shaolin, good.
Right. It's very famous, right? But Shaolin's a Buddhist monastery. A particular warrior monk by the name of Bodhidharma in around 520 AD came to China to preach his version of Buddhism, which is now the most popular, Zen Buddhism. He settled at Shaolin Temple. The monks there were in a very emaciated state physically. Very bad. They couldn't make much headway spiritually because they fall asleep. Every time they meditate, fall asleep. That's what happens in the very beginning. Yeah. You can't get further. But the reason why they were this way is because their idea of Buddhism is that they saw the physical body as a defecating making machine.
Got it.
No good. So they didn't see it as the launch pad for spiritual pursuit. So he developed a set of exercises that greatly rejuvenated their bodies. The warrior monks incorporated that into their combat system, and that's how Shaolin became famous for martial arts.
Well, it's good. I mean, the one thing I do know we are fully understand is no system that consumes energy does it without wasted energy, whether it's heat or waste of other types. Every system, you have an input and you have output, which is work or a thought or waste of some type. You just have to understand, you have to balance all of that.
Right. And so the conversation we're having, it's absolutely necessary. It's imperative, in my opinion, for the survival of humanity, that we begin to understand and get in touch with the fact that human beings are not the body. They're not the soul, right? There's something higher. Thought and thinking and emotions, that's a soul function. But I can observe when I'm happy. I can observe when I'm angry. I can observe my thoughts, which means there's something higher than that. There's something doing the observing. And we have to get in touch with that. You see, if we don't get in touch with that, we are going to tech ourselves out of existence.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There's no doubt. I want to show your books. And so I want you to tell us what you can. Let me do this way. So let's talk about this one. Tell us about this book.
Outstanding. Well, first, okay, I'm also a member of a religious organization called the Moorish Science Symbol of America. The Moorish Science Symbol of America is more than just a religious or spiritual organization. It's also cultural heritage restoration and a civic organization. Our idea of if a heightened spirituality is benefiting me and only me, that's not enough. Right? That doesn't mean I have to proselytize and beat people over their head with my idea of spirituality. No, it does mean that as a better person, I now serve humanity right here in the present. You see, and that's why there's the civic side of it as well. But this particular book is an attempt to demonstrate to not just members of my organization and movement, but also to the public, that what we were given as religious doctrine is also cutting edge sociology, is also cutting edge quantum biology, is also, you see, and so that's what this book kind of, attempts to show. The name Sagala, that word Sagala is important. And I chose it because we're familiar with the Dogon tribe in Mali.
Yeah.
And how for thousands of years they've carried information that there's no way by conventional means they could know about the Sirius star system.
Right.
How they know about not just the fact that Sirius B is a white dwarf, but it's so dense, and all of they know a lot of information. It's pretty interesting. Well, they call the dense matter of Sirius B, they say it's so dense it's a metal. And
it is in fact metal because it moves electrons all over it.
Yes. And so they call the name of the metal, they call it is Sagala. And they say because it's so dense and so small, but so dense that it can even affect affairs here in this solar system. So that's the idea of, so it carries the idea of something small but very concentrated.
So I want you to share one thing that I know almost no one in the audience will know, and many who will see it won't know.
Sure.
A lot of, and I'm a student of history because I have a historian brother. Okay. So a lot of people don't know that Spain has not always been Catholic. They don't know a thing about the Moors. So why don't you educate us and our audience about the Moors?
Wow. I love this show, man. You guys are great. So one of the biggest problems, and I love this. The biggest problem, in our opinion, about the quote unquote African American in America is not up from slavery, residue from slavery. No, it's identity crisis. Core American values, right? If I want to answer up to the standard in Italy of being an Italian, of being an Italian citizen, I have to be what? Italian. That's old world. New world, I have to adopt the idea that there could be a singular nation made up of people of many different old world connections. Make sense?
Indeed, it does. And that's how we were founded. So that could be done.
Absolutely. That's core American values, right? So the biggest issue with the African American is that he was cut off from his old world connection.
Yes.
So now we're talking about episodic history. We're talking about missing gaps in history. What is not well known is that the beginning of the transatlantic African slave trade started in Spain. Started specifically in the year 1442 with the rise of the Reconquista, right? And how the discovery of America, quote unquote, via Columbus is directly tied to the fall of the Moors at Granada in 1492.
Got it. I knew the year. I knew the year. And so Moors are a form of Muslims. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Sure. So yes, but now watch this. We know that culture largely is influenced by religious creed.
Yes.
There we go. So do they necessarily have to be practicing Muslims? No. Just the worldview is influenced by religion. Make sense?
Right. There are a lot of people in the United States of America that are not practicing Christians, but they are heavily influenced by Christianity being the predominant thought in the beginning of the country.
You hit it right on the nose. That's exactly right. You see? And so, but now we're talking at a level that most people don't quite understand because we're just not taught to think like this. Civics is no longer taught in the school system.
Which I despise.
Yeah,
it's not taught.
Exactly. You see? And so this is missing history. This is missing history for the African American. The fact that the first African slaves in America came over 100 years before 1619, and they came from Spain and not the continent of Africa.
Got it.
You see? So a lot of what we call Spanish culture is Moorish culture, with the Moors ruling Spain for nearly 800 years. That's why there's over 2,000 Arabic words in Spanish.
Okay, which book? I didn't know. Which book would you have me bring up next?
I wanted to hear about the word elixir really quick.
Okay, go for it.
Yes. Yes. So the wording, it's so the wording, elixir. That's it's elixir or elixir, right? Yeah. The idea for saying elixir Sagala, right, is to implant an idea that's very small but very concentrated, so concentrated that it influences a large group of things.
Okay.
You see? So, for instance, a statement like, we measure time by cycle ages would qualify. Because when you think of it that way, say, oh, okay, wait a minute. Time is cyclical, not linear. And then when you begin to think this way, right, you're almost thinking prophetically.
Okay.
Because you begin to see patterns. You see what I'm saying?
Weren't you saying there's a pattern with the number 7? I think something with the number 7.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about old world versus new world. Like, for instance, the way we think today, we've been put to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I believe that.
Especially when we've been aggressively encouraged to remove human consciousness from the equation of analysis.
Right.
Okay.
Which appears to me we're beginning to fight back.
Yes.
Because materialism does not satisfy our inner need.
There you go. Exactly. So in the old world, like, let's talk about Pythagorean mathematics. Pythagoras learned in Egypt, and then we talk about Pythagorean mathematics. One of the things that I've never really seen publicly mentioned about the idea of Pythagorean mathematics is this: numbers have a quantitative function. We know that. But in the old world, they had a quantitative and a qualitative function.
Right.
Numbers are living things. They have a personality. They have a character. This is the way, and then of course, most of us in the West are like, I don't know about that guy. I don't know. But this is how it was taught. Yeah. There's a man named Ron Eglash. Ron Eglash is the head of mathematics in Rensselaer Polytechnic College in Troy, New York.
Yes, I know who he is.
Beautiful. Okay. So he wrote a book called African Fractals. And he was speaking to the people in Mali, the Dogon in Mali, and he starts writing equations. They're like, are you kidding me? Don't do that. That's dangerous. And he's like, he didn't quite get it. And he says, listen, I want you to share with me your they said, no, we can't. We can't. And then they finally agreed. They said, well, we have to initiate you first. And one of the first things he recognized, that he learned was that in their worldview, numbers are living things. They have a qualitative function along with quantitative.
And who is this so I can look it up later?
Ron Eglash, Eglash.
He's at RPI, not far from where he is in Troy.
Knows this guy? That's a fact. Yes, that's right. So, when we look at, let's say, the number 7, for instance, right? One of the things that a number of researchers have found out that let's take a piece of copper. I just happen to have a piece. Look at that. And you wrap it exactly 7 times.
Yeah.
Right? What happens is that it produces a very powerful carrier wave that is akin to quantum entanglement.
So one of the things she does is make orgonite pyramids, and she has quartz with a coil wrapped around.
I'm going to do it 7 times.
Now she's going to do it. You have done several of them 7 times, but she will do 7 times now for sure.
Yes.
And with the crystal, it'll oscillate.
Oh, absolutely. Now, interesting point about what you said about the crystal. I'll share something about our martial arts system. We train when we talk about internal development, internal power. You all are very familiar with the simple science experiment of making a electromagnet with an iron nail and copper wire attached to a power source, right?
Yes.
Super simple. Okay, how does it work? You got the ferromagnetism of the nail, and then you've got the copper wiring, which is highly, electrically conductive. You wrap coils in coils around the nail, attached to a power source. You got a magnet.
Yep, electromagnet.
Inside the bone, you have the marrow, and because you have the marrow there, especially the red marrow, you have what? Ferromagnetism.
Iron. You have iron in it.
You're good. Yes.
In the hemoglobin. Yeah.
That's right. Connective tissue is semi-crystalline, which means it has a piezoelectric effect. Physical stress, electric charge. So watch this. Lala, I'd like you to do this. Hold your hand like this. Fingertips are at 12 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Now that's your right hand, am I correct?
Yeah.
Your right elbow is slightly pointing out, isn't it?
Yes.
This is what I want you to do. Drop your elbow so that's pointing directly at the ground, 6 o'clock. Is it?
Yeah.
Now keep it there and correct the fingertips back to 12. Do you feel the stress in your forearm?
Yeah.
It's wrapping in a clockwise direction, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is the connective tissue tightly wrapping around the bone.
Oh my gosh.
We just turned it into an electromagnet.
You just had an orb fly past.
You did. You did have an orb. Yeah. That regularly happens to our guests. I don't know if it happens to you. But you did have a prominent orb for those who want to go back and look at the video.
Yes. Yes.
I
That
love
is an
having you on.
electromagnet.
This is great.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I said I love having you on. This is so fun.
Oh,
And it's interesting. I didn't know half the stuff.
but here's the thing. The fact that, like what I just mentioned to you, is in our system, a system that's over 500 years old. What did these guys know? You see, what did they know where they're applying these types of principles through physical movement to weaponize the body? See? Really, really interesting stuff.
So it was like a super soldier.
Okay. Shout out to my good friend and one-time special access project participant, Randy Wiedenheimer.
Mm-hmm.
Randy Wiedenheimer also does my Kung Fu style.
He's very nice. Yeah.
Randy Wiedenheimer immediately said our system is a super soldier program.
Right. Yeah. So I've been in more than I will admit to special access programs.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it's an interesting world.
Yes.
I was personally happy that none of them were really aimed at human experimentation because I would not have felt comfortable.
Right. I
wonder why the government knows all of this but won't let us learn about it.
They don't want to inform our adversaries.
Is it control?
There's that too. All of those things. But now here's my recent perspective. Here's my recent perspective. A lot of us are waiting for disclosure, right? And so much so that even, watch this, disclosure, the event of disclosure, the idea of the event of disclosure is pretty much replaced the religious idea of the second coming and judgment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now, follow me. Religiously speaking, the second coming is supposed to come like what? A thief in the night.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
And no man will know when.
Right. Now, the fact that I can go online and order a rice machine, the fact that we're having this conversation means that it's quite possible disclosure is here already.
Well, look, the way we live our lives, we don't need disclosure.
Come on.
We get a daily dose. So the other thing is, we tell people what happens to us and we put our data out, but we're not trying to convince a skeptical scientist. We are not interested in wasting our energy.
There you
go.
go.
We just put all our data up and whoever looks at it can take it any way they want to.
Right. And, the powers that be, like, another shout out to my good friend Emery Smith, certain things we could talk about, no big deal. Talk free about, no big deal. Some things, a little dangerous. If we start talking about, for instance, monoatomic elements in the medical field. Yeah.
Or if Emery talks about the secret space program, he's constantly in trouble.
Yeah. But even he told me, he said, yeah, So a lot of that stuff, like with anti-gravitics and things like that, he could talk fairly freely about that. It's no big deal. Start talking about medical stuff, you get unalived real quick.
That is true.
Yeah, you get
unalived. Very true. God
True.
forbid we're healthy. I mean, even the medicine keeps us sick and alive. It doesn't heal. It doesn't go to the root cause of things.
Again, going back to the thinking and how we've been conditioned, right? Dr. Becker, Robert Becker, wrote his book, The Body Electric.
Yes.
Another life-changing book. He did his research right here in Syracuse University, by the way. But his whole thing was, as I'm sure you know, Bob, his first initial question for the research was, is the human organism capable of regeneration of limbs and organs?
It is, right?
His short answer was yes. Be his research, and that's when they pulled his funding. But anyway, the short answer is yes. But a ton of other things he discovered in the process. Listen to it. But he's okay. So what is it contingent upon? It's contingent upon a steady, balanced amplification of the bioenergetic system. Right.
I guarantee you, if a lizard can do it, we can figure out how to do it.
How?
Well, we
Go
get
ahead, Lala.
that it heals up in a day. We do it in a small amount, already.
Now watch one of the things. This is one of the things that they stumbled upon in their research. We have stem cells, right? A stem cell is an undifferentiated cell.
Yep, unadapted.
Okay. Guess what they discovered?
What?
That the human body is capable of de-differentiation.
They did discover that. I remember the paper.
What does that
Yes,
mean?
sir.
That means you can have a skin cell go back to being a stem cell.
Correct.
And being able to adapt it into anything it wants to be.
Correct.
That means you literally can regrow something. That's true. You can regrow if we figure out how to guide it.
There you go. There you go. Now remember, we're talking energetics here as a key component, and what directs energy? Intent.
Yeah.
Hence yet another reason why, certain people don't want us thinking about amplification of consciousness.
Right.
See?
I'm going to tell you right now, I've been a mathematician, physicist, and engineer, started 2 engineering companies, and I'm going to tell you right now, the remainder of my life is focused on consciousness.
Yeah, listen, it's the thing. It's the study right now. It really is. With Western psychology, the foundation of it was what? The West's search for evidence of existence of the soul.
Right.
So, you have the whole, big beef with Descartes and the Queen of England. Descartes goes in a room and says, you know what, darn it, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm just gonna sit here until it comes to me. Then finally he thinks about it, pun intended, right? And he says, cogito ergo sum, right? I think, therefore I am. I've got the proof. He runs back to the Queen. I'm thinking. There's your proof. She says, but I can't see your thoughts.
However, with enough development of consciousness, she could have seen his thoughts.
Absolutely. That's a fact.
The intention and discipline and belief will get you there.
See, and this leads to another thing that we're battling. One of the biggest problems relative to what we're dealing with here, it began with basically the Spanish Inquisition. Spanish Inquisition, you couldn't think without considering the fires of the Holy Office. So the Spanish Inquisition literally killed a paradigm. It killed a way of thinking, which led to this whole putting humanity to sleep. In other words, you can't use the consciousness, right? Can't use the consciousness. Why? Consciousness will affect the outcome. Absolutely.
Yeah, the quantum measurement is affected by it every time.
That's right. That's right.
Can I tell you who taught me that? John Archibald Wheeler taught me that.
Wow.
Yeah, I knew him. So I mean, he would go it from bit and believe he and his students were the inventor of quantum information theory at a very early age. It was like Einstein doing photoelectric was kind of one of the beginnings of quantum mechanics. Wheeler and his students with it from bit and other things were kind of the beginning of quantum information theory. And now all of physics is going to wind up being quantum information theory and consciousness.
Listen, we're being dragged, kicking and screaming, into a new paradigm.
I think actually, I think evidence is dragging us there.
Yes.
Results in laboratories are dragging us there. But you also need expanded thinking so that you can tune your soul to the universe and figure stuff out.
Yes. And to the point I just made earlier about the Spanish Inquisition, which this worldview was heavily influenced by, it's starting to run its course, which is why people are thinking out the box. I talk to my students about this. The same thing that happened from the religious perspective with the Spanish Inquisition also happened with science. So we have science versus scientism. People think that there's a beef between religion and science. No. There's a beef between religion and scientism. Science itself or science itself is neutral to religion. It just means to know. Like, for instance, the term theology means what? The science of God. Mm-hmm. You see? So it's neutral. It's not an opposition. It's neutral. Now,
I can assure you the Jesuit order is not against science.
Right. Correct.
They're definitely not.
There you go. Who was it that said, I can't remember who it was that said it, but they said adequately developed science is indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
You see?
Yeah.
But now what we've been told is science is not science. It's bad psychology or bad philosophy.
Well, a lot of people believe that a physical theory is truth. A physical theory is current belief given the experimental data and the person who invented the theory's description of it with the arcane structures and mathematics. But it is not truth. It is a rough description of it.
There you go. We don't, when we're talking about scientism, there's a profound internal contradiction. Here it is. It is impossible to know. I got to say it. I'll repeat it. It's impossible to know whether the only way to truly know anything is by using your physical senses.
Well, I can tell you, if people want to believe in science and mathematics, then they ought to listen to Donald Hoffman, who has proven a mathematical theory based on evolutionary game theory that these senses do not perceive reality, and what we see is an illusion. That's a proof.
Listen, that is so frightening to the masses that they would dare not even think about it. I scared the bejesus out of my students with that very thing, with this example. I said, okay, we learned this in grade school. You're looking at this object right here. What color is this object? Oh, it's red. Why is it red? Well, it's red. And my students are like, oh, because it's red. We learned this in school. It's red because it's absorbing every other color in the spectrum but red, and it's reflecting that back to the eye, goes to the optic nerve, and then it's interpreted that way. I said, where? In your head. I said, so do you realize what you're saying? What you're saying is that it's red only between your ears.
Right. Or not.
Or not.
It's whatever your consciousness is, it's where it's being interpreted.
Come on.
Which is not, I don't believe it's in your head.
Right. So, and what we just, so it's frightening because, again, that's paradigm shaking. It really is. Like, what? You mean to tell me that I really, literally, another order, esoteric order I belong to is the old order of Al-Hashashim.
I was gonna go. So look, everybody that's studied anything knows about, quote, the Order of Assassins, giving it a bad name. So
Yeah.
tell us as much as you want to tell us about
Of
it.
course, it's most religious, like in the old days, you know, religious orders were considered higher education.
Right.
Okay. Even with the church, you had inner order, you had outer order and inner order. Okay. So even in Islam, you have exoteric and you have esoteric, inner teaching. So the most common or most well known is the Sufis, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interface between the Sufis and the Ismailis. The Ismailis were part of this, were like esoteric Shiaism.
Right.
Right. And so
a lot of people don't know that Ishmael was the son of Abraham, born to Rebekah, and was sent away at the end so Isaac could lead Abraham's people.
You hit it right on the nose. That's right. And so that's another line of development that is not so much spoken about. Right. So the order is esoteric Islam. So in our order, there's certain things we say specifically because what are we doing? We're reshaping worldview. Our left brain controls our personal worldview. Right brain is connected to the universe, connected to everything. It knows everything already. But it's the left brain that says, is this useful? If it's not, throw it out. But guess who tells us? Our outward, we allow our outward influences to tell us what's useful, what's not useful. You didn't see any ghosts. Get that out of your head. That's, oh, okay. And we do.
I'd like for them to come talk to that thing that stands in front of us, and our dog stands up to like that and talks to.
Yes. Right. Right. You see? And so, you know, the purpose of these higher orders is to dismantle the left brain, you know, paradigms and then reshape them so that it allows more in, right? So we say that in the order, the outside world is nothing but unfolding consciousness being projected. That's what it is. And it's a mutual, and what we see, it's mutually agreed upon. Therefore, we take it as real. You see? That in and of itself, for many of us, take years for us to really wrap our head around and say, okay, I accept that. You see? Because it's too easy to be like, no, it's real because it's real. Not it's real because a critical mass of us have agreed on its reality. You see? And so and that's to your point earlier about the whole vision thing. Our outside world is literally our unfolding perception. And one of our objectives with bioenergetic transhumanism is to expand our perception and not crack the psyche. We don't want to end up in the puzzle factory, which can happen, which can happen if you go too fast or you don't take the careful steps. So yes, that's in essence, that is what bioenergetic transhumanism is about. The fact that, and then you spoke about quantum biology.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite people now is this little old Chinese lady by the name of Mei Wan Ho.
Rainbow in the world.
Mei Wan Ho is an award-winning quantum physics biologist.
A lot of people don't understand that quantum physics is the basic basis for chemistry, and the chemistry and the other physics is the basis for everything in us.
Yes. So one day she was watching a table tennis match. And at one point, these guys were in the zone. So much so that the ball's just going back and forth. We've seen that before. And it hits her. The classical explanation for classical biology of the information being transmitted coming from the DNA is now being outpaced ridiculously. There's no way in the world that much information is being passed that fast. No.
Right.
So she figured there's got to be another way that the body, the human organism, is transducing this amount of information. And so in her research, you all are familiar with monoatomic elements like monoatomic gold. She finds that the human body is packed with this stuff. Guess where, though? In the connective tissue highway, in a gel sol state. Gel sol meaning what? Ones and zeros. Ones and zeros, people. The binary system.
Yep.
Yes.
Wow.
There's a look, the yes no is there's a very good reason why all of our computers and all of our ability to describe information in a useful way that we can do science with it is because yes, no, and 0, 1 are all the same thing. Yes. And they are all logically the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with her research, so her research now mirrors, now it is manna. I like that. Her research mirrors or parallels Rupert Sheldrake's research.
Oh, yes. I love Sheldrake.
Yes. So Rupert Sheldrake talks about the morphogenic field. In other words, an area of exotic space beyond 3D, right? Beyond three-dimensional space or in a higher dimension. Now, from a biological perspective, Mae-Wan Ho was demonstrating that we have a personal presence in that space. So people will talk about, okay, well, limbs can regenerate or, organs can repair themselves. How? The classical explanation is, well, the map is in the DNA. Okay, well, how does DNA repair itself? Where does it get its instructions from? So Mae-Wan Ho and Rupert Sheldrake are showing that we have a higher dimensional model of ourselves.
Up in consciousness of some type.
Right. And now here's what's really interesting. Shout out to John Rayhart. He's another scientist, right? Another interesting thing. So the interface happens because of the monoatomic elements in our system, right? So because because of the nature of a monoatomic, let's say monoatomic gold atom, right? It forms around itself a Meissner field.
Yep.
This is deep. A Meissner field, right, repels magnetic fields. Okay. But anything in the Meissner field is now quantum entangled.
Yep.
Now, why is that deep? For me personally, in a lot of occult and esoteric orders, the space in which the magical operation takes place mimics, at least philosophically, a Meissner field. Because within the field of operations, you have access to any and every point in space and time.
Let me do a little interpretation. So the thing that makes gold special is that outside of this field, the electrons can flow. That's what makes it a conductive metal. Yes. But inside, things can get trapped and wobble and interact to the point where they're correlated when they move on.
Yes. Now, one of the things that John Rayhart and other scientists figured out too is that they can now reverse the process. So like with orbitally rearranged monoatomic gold, it's gold, but it's a powder. It's no longer a metal, lost its metal to metal bonds, right? They can reverse the process. How do you do it? Bombardment of microwaves. Now, imagine your cells no longer having the access to your morphogenic self in exotic space. So now it can't repair, it can't get the instructions to repair and maintain. So the order is off. So now you have a cell that thinks it's an organ. And what's that called? Cancer. Okay. Now look at all or the rising incidences of ear tumors in the head and the ear. because you got a microwave machine.
Yeah, we sleep next to it. It's always with us.
There you go. There you go. Disrupting.
So that and we are as individuals all becoming addicted to the dopamine that we get from looking at these things.
It was made on purpose for us to do certain things.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. See, and the whole thing about expanded consciousness too, I'm kind of jumping the subject, but a topic, but my wife has very, that was one of the things when Lala was telling me her story, I'm like, oh my God. My wife has pictures or crazy stuff, pictures, video, craft, all these things.
She could come on too.
Yes.
That'd be awesome.
Yes.
I suggest that we agree to this was not enough and we need to do it again.
I was thinking it the whole time, like he's got to come back like every
because we're 10 minutes over our typical length, but this is not enough.
Yes, I'd love to. This is amazing. I promise you, besides the fact that these are exciting topics and we're in exciting times, right? This is like therapy for me. I'm like, oh man, I get to talk about this. So yeah, absolutely.
You help a lot. I did not know the way you explained it was helpful to me because this is stuff I want to learn, but I just didn't know where to start or where to look. And it's things that we all need to know to be healthier physically, mentally, spiritually, because we're not taught that at all. We're just taught to survive. That's it.
Or put up with and go along.
Yeah.
In other words, our power, we've been conditioned to abdicate our power.
Yes.
Robert Becker in his book, in his introduction, said something that was amazing. He said, prior to the discovery of penicillin, even Western medicine had to include the patient in the process of the healing. Then
that's for sure true nowadays, where doctors are not much more than technicians.
You hit it right on the nose. Dr. Becker pretty much said that. This is what he said. Of course, penicillin worked. It's like, oh, this is amazing. But guess what it did? It polarized the medical mind. So now doctors are what? Or medicine is considered what? Applied biochemistry. Okay, the operation was a success. Unfortunately, the patient didn't survive the operation. How in the world? You get it? So they totally X out the patient. So that conditions us. So now we say, here's my child. He's sick. I'll be back at 3 o'clock to fix him.
Right.
Now, I want you to understand, this is coming from a fellow who has a brother and a daughter who are doctors. I mean, I'm just telling you, they're not like this. I promise you, they are not. They are special. They're creative.
Yes.
They invent things that help. But
yes,
almost all doctors I know, they don't go past the surface. They have a little manual which tells them what to diagnose and what to prescribe, and that's as far as they go.
So I'm sad. It's sad to say it's a sales model.
Well, that and the insurance companies running our medical system is largely responsible.
Come on, that's a fact.
To pick different types of like Chinese medicine, other just knowledge. If you don't want to use it, the knowledge about it, I think, would be very helpful. So maybe we could talk about that next time too.
Sharif, tell people how to get a hold of you. Where do you want them to go to check on you?
You can catch me on Facebook. That's probably the easiest. Catch me on Facebook, Sharif Anael-Bey, or Instagram. You can catch me at under the same name on Instagram. Either one is perfect.
Okay, great. People, we hate to have to go, but we are really going to work hard to get him back as soon as possible.
I'd love to.
Maybe we could get you on with Alan Greenfield if you like or not, or do both of you.
And your wife, I want her to come on too. That'd be cool.
Gotcha. I will make that happen.
Yes, and so we really appreciate people being here. We love doing this show.
Can I share one other thing real quick?
Yeah, please share whatever you want.
You know who this person is. I'm going to mention him. We've been in contact for now almost 2 years now. I sought him out, Dr. Hal Putoff.
But I know Hal.
Yes. He wrote a paper recently that Lala, you would love. It's called Ultra Terrestrial Models.
He really, and can you believe he got that in a peer-reviewed physics journal?
I'm shocked. And I asked him, I said, what made you write that? And he says, he said, there's too much talk about the tech and not the intelligence behind the tech.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
Yes.
That and
Thank you for telling me that.
I think people avoid talking to him, but he's a genuinely kind person.
He didn't know me from a can of paint. We've developed a little bit of a relationship because I pestered the bejesus out of him. Ask him all kinds of questions. And some questions he won't answer directly because, you got to put the work in.
Yep.
I'm a kung fu man, so I get that.
Oh yeah, he's not gonna spend hours every day educating you, but if you'll do a little work, he'll interact with you.
Yes.
So it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. This was a delight.
This was
and you will be back.
Yeah.
And I'm going to track you down. Good night, everyone.
Good night.